Well, I think we all know why we're here. I'm trying to impart some intelligence on you guys. Don't be disappointed, okay? That may not happen. Every time that I made public presentations before, for 20 years, I was an auditor. So somewhere along the line, I may start passing discrepancies, okay? But no problem. What we're here to talk about is HF operating. Originally, it was primarily just talk about DX, but we were reminded that there are some differences in operating procedures between HF and VHF and UHF. So, some of you may have heard that my wife and I enjoy cruising. We go on quite a few cruises, and there are fantastic things about cruising. Your hotel takes you to different places, and you have some time to gather some information and learn a few things. And so we enjoy that. The bedside of cruising is that you arrive at 7 a.m. and you leave at 5 p.m. and you have no chance to really get the knowledge and to get to know the environment. So that's why I say that this talk's going to be a cruising adventure. We're going to be talking about a lot of things. We're not going to have time to go deep into, first of all, no time, second, lack of knowledge, to go too deep into anything. But what we hope is that we'll be able to cover a variety of activities and items that probably will clarify a few things on your HF operation. I know that a lot of you probably have more knowledge about HF than I do. So, but if you have any questions, please let me know. And there will be place for questions, but I don't mind being interrupted, okay? And it's the best way to learn. First of all, what is DX, okay? It's primarily just an old CW abbreviation for distance or distant. I think Wilson mentioned that in his lecture the other day. On the HF, it's primarily, in general, we think about talking to other countries. But when you go up in VHF and UHF, it may be just the next town, you know, the distance is relative to the frequency and the capability of the band that you're using. Okay, but basically we're talking about talking to other countries. Why would you want to do a DXing? Okay, well, these are some of the reasons that apply to me. Okay, personal satisfaction of reaching long distances and the thrill of contacting difficult stations. If any of you were present at the Aries contact the other day with the Girl Scouts, it was incredibly thrilling. The voice came in the middle of the static, and there was a lot of emotion in that one. I'm not saying that it's the same thing, but there is a good example of how it feels when you really try to get that contact and it's in the log. It feels good. Okay? And you can qualify for special certificates. I'm quite sure Bob is going to be talking about some of that as well. Collecting QSL, the little card, business cards that we used to exchange by mail, and nowadays it's primarily electronic. Okay, but primarily for me, it's a great experience of learning geography, trying to find where is that place, and with that, sometimes you go interested in seeing the history and the customs and language, and then etc. So, if nothing else, it's just fun. Okay. Now, when you go to HF, you have several means of operating. You have a net participation, just like you have in the repeaters. No difference, although the nets may cover a very, very large area and may have participants from many different places. On our 10-meter net, we already had people coming from New Zealand and several other countries that they showed up when the propagation opens up. You can do reg chewing, just, you know, chatting, just like we were doing on the 40-meter net now on Saturdays. Inconsequential, light conversation. Keep in touch with family, friends far away. I'm originally from Brazil. When I came to the States in '65, I joined the Air Force, and very soon I ended up going to Alaska. That's why I have my KL7 call. On the way to Alaska, from California to Alaska, using a VW and TR3 and an antenna, we talked to a family in Brazil every single day of the trip. Okay, the conditions were as good then as it is basically now. Other activities that may attract you is just providing emergency services. Okay, the maritime net is very active on 20 meters. There are all kinds of emergency services provided through the IARU and other organizations. Or you can do just technical experimentation. I think Phil is a good example. He doesn't operate that much, but he is tinkering with the antennas and all the equipment. And Carol and Bob AVC. They are using HF activities for technical development and experimentation. And DXing is one of the activities that you may choose to follow. Now, what kind of modes we have? Primarily phone is single sideband. We do have FM, and old AM is still alive in HF. But Morse code, CW, the original digital mode, is available. As a matter of fact, we have in the region here, W6SFM, which is the Samuel F. Morse Club, strictly Morse code. And I don't think anybody owns a microphone in that club. If you come in with a microphone, they kick you out of the meeting. We'll have the traditional digital modes, the old packet and RTTY, and if you notice, I have SSTV twice, because the old SSTV is drastically different from what we have today. We have an SSTV NAT, and there's fantastic pictures, and the resolution is really good, even though some people don't know a certain lady, what did I describe, Swift, Taylor Swift?
Taylor Swift.
Yeah, we were doing that with the Girl Scouts, and they sent that, and I have no idea who the young lady was. So I described a nice picture of a very attractive young lady, and I understand that kind of made the news there. So, but anyway, so we have the modern digital modes of PSK 31 and some variations from PSK 31 and many variations. And you have SSTV and FT8. FT8 is loved by many and disliked intensely by others. It is a great mode to test low power and to see where the propagation is open. A lot of people say it's impersonal since there is a computer-to-computer contact, but it has its value. And it's exciting. I think Jan started and she got caught on that.
Mm-hmm.
The DXing can, go ahead.
A lot of people were using Whisper during the eclipse. Whisper.
Yeah.
It's a beacon-like mode.
Uh-huh. Tell us a little bit about it.
Yeah, so what they do is they set up a station that sends out a signal like every 10 or 15 minutes, and it has your call sign, your grid square, and your power encoded in it. And there were hundreds of these stations going on during the eclipse. And all that information is collected in a repository online that's going to be studied now scientifically.
Yeah, I have a little
Yes.
tiny bit on that here.
Yes, Whisper. I've been doing Whisper like for about 12 years now.
Yeah, I Whisper and all the beacons, and reverse beacons and beacons
Yes.
that we can use. Okay, but by the way, DXing can be done in all modes. There are no restriction because you have people all over the world active in all of those modes. Now, what about the equipment that you need? Okay, some of the things that you see if you go look at HRO, or if you go into a lot of ham shacks, you see so many things. Do I really need all that? You know, how much that's going to cost me? Okay, and you find out that there are some differences in the equipment, but you don't need all of that. So you find out the similarities are much stronger. Okay. The basic equipment you need is the same one that you always have. You have a power source, a transceiver, feed line antenna, and grounding systems. That's basically what you have in VHF, UHF, or HF. Nothing changes. HF seems to look a lot more complex because due to the wavelength being larger, the antennas are bigger, and usually you want a little bit more power. So there's a difference in size, but the complexity and the way the equipment works is exactly the same. Power sources, same thing. Power batteries or generators, or no difference whatsoever. You may be a little bit bigger because of more capacity, because of the more power that you may want to have. But it's the same thing. The transceivers, normally they are larger and they are desktop. Although recently a lot of portable and smaller equipment for HF is coming all over the place. You have a lot of activities on HF for operating parks on the air and summits on the air, which they want to have the very portable devices. So some of them are available. They tend to be a little pricey, but they're available. Feed lines, actually feed lines for HF are a little bit simpler because they are not so sensitive. As the higher the frequency you go, the more critical that feed line becomes. So they are important, and you still have to take it into consideration. But the difficulty has decreases on HF. Antennas. Now that's where you see the biggest difference. Okay, again, because of the wavelength, the antennas will have to be more bulky. Will be longer. Will be a little more complex, but not necessarily. You saw the presentation from Phil, and you probably heard from him how simple antennas can be made very economically, and they work very effectively. Okay, antennas are important. But of course, if you wanted to do DX, you want the best antenna you can, a directional antenna. But when you enter the HF world, okay, you don't start driving a 16 with a Maserati, right? You start gradually and you continue as you learn and you improve. Grounding systems, no change. It's basically the same thing: safety and RF interference and lightning arrest and in general the safety of the operating area. Let me see if I am skipping anything here that. There is another alternative on HF, which is called QRP. I'm quite sure all of you know that amateurs have this Q code, from a lot of abbreviations that came from the Morse code environment, and QRP meaning lower power, and primarily less than 5 watts. And so there are a lot of ham operators who are addicted to QRPs, and they try to do DXing QRP, and some of them are successful. I have not been. We did that tuna tin too, right?
Yes.
And I made 3 contacts on it, but all local. What about you? Did you?
I worked the East Coast.
The East Coast with that?
Yeah, especially with QRP, the antenna is very crucial. You need a very efficient antenna. I mean, it doesn't have to be expensive, but it has to work and it has to be effective to get the last dB out of those watts that you're putting out. Yeah.
I put in here antenna efficiency becomes considerably more significant
Yes.
because of the low power. And, before we go into operating differences, do we have any questions on equipment or any doubts that you may have? James?
Is QRP always 5 watts and below, or is it just low wattage? I mean, is 5?
I think officially it's 5 watts and below, but
I think there's a different definition for voice. Voice is allowed up to 15 watts.
oh really?
And CW up to 5 watts. Yeah, because there's several dBs of difference between those 2 modes.
It also depends if you're participating in a contest, and then you need to follow the rules of the contest, and some of them are 5 watts or less for QRP. But, it just depends on what contest you're doing or how you feel like identifying yourself.
And we're talking QRP less than 5 watts. This young lady just said that she reached the East Coast with our tuna tin 2, which has which has how much power?
That was less than 1 watt.
Less
Yes.
than 1 watt.
I'm impressed.
So I think it started with less than half a watt, right? I think, and then
Correct.
it was tuned up a little bit higher.
Yes.
Welcome.
Thank you.
Was that voice or was that?
That was a Morse code.
That's quite a distance.
There's a sign-in sheet up there.
And so far, we just talked a little bit about the equipment, and we're going into the operating mode differences now. Okay, so you did not miss too much, except for the little video. By the way, Bob told me that apparently that tower that that was in Finland, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, that tower that they actually climbed, and some of them are more comfortable up there than others from the video, and that tower came down. I haven't heard, but Bob was telling me that tower is no longer there. Okay, operating differences, okay? In VHF, we have repeaters, we have frequencies, calling frequencies, and etc. On HF, I say no repeaters, almost. There are some repeaters on the upper end of 10 meters, which are used for specific purposes. But in general, repeaters are not used in HF. That's a general statement. I'm quite sure there are quite a few exceptions. And what you do is you're scanning the frequencies. You select the band and you're scanning the frequency like an analog mode, right? You're just going up and down the frequency looking for signals. And the most common way to establish a contact is either calling CQ or answering a CQ. There are many different rules, which are not rules. People say that you should do a 3x3 or 2x5 CQ, 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 your call three times it. It's immaterial. You're going to find your own style, okay? As long as you communicate who you are, what you're trying to do, and normally where you are, okay? You'll be in good shape to answer or receive a contact. Don't get caught up with following a certain specific rule and a format. That is not necessary. Okay. Another issue is scanning the band. For some reason, maybe you know why, Carol, I don't. All bands are higher than 10 megahertz. They are upper sideband. And below, they are lower sideband. So 40 and 80 and 160 are lower sideband. And anything above 40 is all the way up to 10 meters is upper sideband. A little bit of a subtle difference. As you scan the frequency, since you only have the upper sideband or the lower sideband, as you scan in this direction, the voice, the noise, the signal that you hear go from treble to bass, okay, or go from bass to treble, depends on which way you're scanning. And some people are very uncomfortable with one direction or the other. It doesn't make any difference to me. But there is something that you'll notice that there's a little bit of a difference in there. You just adjust to your own style. You know why the upper and lower, Carol?
Yes, this is historical and had to do with the first sideband transmitters that were being built. They were using VFOs that went from 5 megahertz to 5.5 megahertz. And then they would heterodyne that against 9 megahertz. So when you add 5 plus 9, it gives you 14 megahertz. And when you subtract 5 from 9, it gives you 4 megahertz. So when you're generating your sideband signal at 9 megahertz and you're taking either the addition or subtraction, it's going to invert the sideband on the lower side, and it comes upper sideband on the right side. It's just, that's the way they used to build the first sideband transmitters.
So it became historical now?
Yes, that's why it got established that way. The only exception, of course, now is the new 60-meter band, which is upper sideband. It's one of the lower frequencies that is upper sideband.
I've been operating ham radio since 1960, when I was 16 years old in Brazil, using my father's, legally, father's call letters. In the States, I started in 1971, and I operated until 1998. Took a 20-year break. Internet, who cares? No, ham radio's dead. Then I came back and got the bug again. So my knowledge has gaps, just like that. The warp bands, I had to learn all about the warp bands. That they did not exist when I was really operating. Hello, Wilson.
Sorry I'm late, guys. Good afternoon.
It's okay.
You're buying.
There's a chair.
This chair
Is there any beer here?
There's a chair next to Tony.
There's another chair right here too.
There's room here. All right, here. Take this one.
Neil, I want to make I have a question.
Yes, please.
And of course, I don't ask a question unless I know the answer.
Well, that's good, because I may not know the answer, so.
So, yeah, it's custom to operate on lower sideband at 40 and below, and upper sideband above, but can you operate on the other side? Can you mix it up?
I'll give you my answer, then I'll listen to you, Carol. It's my understanding that there is no rule against it. Is the protocol, and if you and I decide to operate upper sideband and we are on the frequency that we're not interfering in anybody, I think we can do that legally. Am I correct?
You're absolutely right. And there are actually some people that build simple double sideband transmitters and use those on the band. So they're transmitting both upper and lower.
Yeah, but actually, you can broadcast in AM.
Or AM,
Yeah.
yes, you could do, there's nothing against it, it's just a convention. Yes, it makes it more compatible.
Well, if you're looking for somebody to talk to and they're gonna be on upper sideband, you aren't gonna find them if you're on lower sideband in that band, so.
Yeah, you may be a little
Kind of makes sense to
lonely.
look where they are.
You just hear Donald Duck and you wouldn't understand what they're saying.
And remember, that's why the Donald Duck sounds different in one direction and the other. So-
Well, and actually, that's a good operating tip, that if you come across something that doesn't sound quite right, check the other side and see, sometimes people push the wrong button. Right? They may not know they're on the wrong side.
Yeah.
Okay. Logs. We'll talk more about logs later on, but logs are used and normally they're kept on UTC, Universal Coordinated Time, or GMT. Primarily for the obvious reason, you're talking the long distance in different countries around the world. That's a common reference point. So the logs, I normally, sometimes I don't have my UTC available, so I mark in local, but I mark the date because I need to know from a Pacific Daylight or standard, and then I have to translate to put in the log. But usually, most of the logs, electronic logs today, they'll capture the time for you, but it's always UTC.
Can I make one clarifying point
Please,
on that?
please.
When you do manual logging, which a lot of us still do depending on where you are, when you do what Neil's saying, which is you wrote the local time and the date, but then you convert when you get back home into your computer log into UTC time, it's possible, particularly if you had an evening contact here Pacific time,
Date.
that the date's different.
Yeah.
So it's not just the time that advances, it's the date that
You have
advances.
to keep the
It's
24,
your
even
case
local,
data.
keep the 24-hour clock.
Yeah.
And then you
Yeah.
will detect those changes very quick. You know, I add 3 and flip. Sometimes you have to flip the date. Okay.
Neil, question?
Please.
When you're logging, like at QRZ, et cetera, so how accurate to the time of the contact? Is there a window? You can like,
I think because of they're going to try to match
Yeah.
the contacts, I believe that at least on Ham Radio Deluxe, they talk about 10 minutes. But I don't know if there is a protocol on that. Do you know, Carol?
I don't know, but I know Logbook Good World, they want to make sure that those times match up, but they do allow 5 minutes plus or minus. So it could be up to 10 minutes
That's
difference.
probably where the 10
Yeah.
minutes came with that idea about. Yeah, because it won't be exact, you know, it'd be. Okay.
Or else you don't get credit for a contact if it doesn't match.
Is it, in contesting, you're trying to flip through QSOs as quickly as possible, but is it worthwhile to kind of concur on a QSO time?
Well, I tell you what, why don't you hold that question
Okay.
until Bob comes in, because
Thank you.
that's exactly what he's going to be covering, okay? Okay, another difference that you see is split operation. Bob's going to talk about that as well, because you see that in sometimes in contest, well, not as much in contesting, but in the DXing, you can imagine a very rare country, there is very few people, and somebody shows up from that location. You can imagine it's a incredible amount of people trying to contact them with what we call the pile-up, and it can be extremely severe. So a lot of DX operators, they work on what they call split frequency. They transmit on one frequency and then they listen on another one, usually 5 or 10 kilohertz higher. And they normally sign up, listening 5 up, listening 5 up. They keep on telling you that. What happened is that in that case, you can hear the DX very clearly, and you don't hear the pile up. He's going to have to put up with it to select who he's answering. Okay, so for you it's a benefit, but it's very easy when you are looking for a DX and you find a DX to answer right on his frequency. That's the common reaction that we have. So pay attention. One needs to pay attention to the instructions, and if you hear only the DX and nobody else, that's an indication that maybe you should look for a split. In some modern radios, you can listen to both. Okay, mine does not. But just about all transceivers nowadays, even not back in 1960s and 70s, allows you to do incremental receiving and incremental transmitting, DXIT or RIT, which will allow you to tune the radio so that you don't have to touch. You are listening here and you're broadcasting there. You may change the transmit frequency up and down a few hertz because you don't want to be right on top of the power up. You may be in the fringe, but that's a technicality that you will learn with practice. Okay. Anything else on
Is it on your next one?
Can I ask a question?
Sure.
You made a statement that you can listen, some radios you can listen to both. Did you mean listen to their frequency as well as the split frequency?
Correct.
Yes.
At the same time?
Yes.
Yeah. Like if you have a dual receiver.
Oh,
Okay, you're tuning differently and you can hear it.
Like the ones you have.
Most of the SDRs do that. That's part of the radio.
And there's some earphones also that you can even split the earphones and put one in one ear and the other.
Did you say?
A lot of those DXpeditions operate down in the extra class frequencies, because there's less congestion there as well. So that's a good incentive for people to upgrade.
I'm an advanced. I should be given extra.
Well, the advanced and extras pretty much have a lot of the same frequencies.
Yeah, just a little bit that we can't.
You're extra to us,
No, notice I didn't say extra what. Okay, now here is something. This first one here was a cooperation with Bob. He's a little more. I think if you hear your call and somebody saying up, or other disparaging words, pay attention. You may be transmitting the wrong frequency. That you are not operating in split as you should. Okay. Okay, I already mentioned that one. And now the one disadvantage of a split, that is when you were listening to the pile up, you detect some personalities of that DX station. Some of them will answer the first station that they hear. Obviously, they're going to go for the strongest, but the first one. Others, for some reason, they just pick up the trailers. You know, the pile up goes up and it begins to go away, and somebody calls. That's the one that he picks up. So when you can listen to the pile up, you detect those little differences that may make the timing of your call a little bit more profitable. And it's interesting when we have contests. Okay, Bob and I have a friendly. It's not a wager of money. It's just a friendly competition and who is going to gain. And one thing that we don't do during contests, we do not. If I'm home and he hears, do you need the Timbuktu? Yes, I need. What frequency? I go there. A contest starts, that stops. Okay, you never, because first of all, it's part of the rules. You don't do that. But it's kind of very interesting, and I think we caught each other listening on the pile up and trying to detect those differences and trying to pick up the stations. It's been fun.
A few times you'll notice that the DX station also has a pattern. They'll start listening at the lower part of the frequency and then move up, and then maybe go back down, or start over at the lower part and move back up. So if you have a radio that will receive and transmit on different frequencies, you can watch his answers move up the band, and you can tune just a little higher, and he would have a chance of getting you. So it's one of those kind of things that you just kind of listen and do it year after year, and you get some of these ideas as to what you can do to have them call you.
And that's why the radios that have the band adapter or the waterfall makes it easy that you can track. Okay? It sure made a big difference when we were doing the area station and tracking satellites before the contact, and you could just see where it's beginning. So you developed a little bit of confidence on the antenna. Okay. Before we go there, any question on operating circumstances or procedures or any more differences? Okay. I'm quite sure there are a lot that I am skipping there. Yes, sir.
quick question. So the purpose of the DX moving around is to resist or kind of move away from pileups?
Not moving away, but being able to pick within the pile-up the station that he chooses to answer. So,
You come in
and-
just a few hertz at a time.
yeah, oh, yes,
Very little
just a
increment.
little bit.
Yeah.
You know, just, the power lap is this big on a waterfall,
Yeah.
you may be here, maybe here, maybe here, maybe here, you know, that's what he's talking about.
So,
Just-
so the DX is selecting who they want to respond to?
Yes,
And that's why they're moving?
yes,
Okay.
yeah. Because I found out there are a lot of DXs that go for trailers, for trailing calls. You know,
Okay.
everybody comes out, and then that last one it normally comes more clear. But if there's somebody with a kilowatt, they're going to pick them up first, no question about it. That's why in DXing, well, I'll let Bob talk about that in contesting. The timing, you know, when you turn on your radio to go try. You know. And that's the big guy. That's the big guns.
The
take care
DX
first.
station moves their receiver dial. They don't move their transmitter frequency.
Oh yeah,
Okay,
good clarification. Yeah.
thank you.
Yeah, no, the DX is transmitting the same frequency, just
By doing that, it allows them to hear different sounds coming
Mhm.
that you pick up.
and make more intelligible in one direction or another.
Right.
There's been many times that I'm there for many minutes trying to get that station, and Bob comes in and he gets it, and I call again and I get it, and vice versa. You know, you can stay there for a long time for some reason. You just didn't that split second that was the right one, and that's the thrill there. Got it.
And you also listen to the DXer, because a lot of times they'll say, I'm listening for sixes. And so if you have a 7 call sign like Neil, unless he sends /6, he should not be transmitting. Only the people in 6 land should be talking, so that they're giving people a chance to work them. So I'm only working JA, or I'm working Europe, or I'm working South America, and so you shut up so that the people in South America can make their contact.
And I hear comments that American operators are very well regarded around the world for that, for respecting that. When some parts of Europe and Asia, they don't. But Americans normally are pretty good at respecting that. I, for instance, when I am calling CQ, or I say I'm KL7HQR in California, you know, because many times I get the contact, and many in contest, they say, oh, you're in Alaska. No, I'm in California. You're part of it. No, I live here. And so it gets confusing, because in some logging programs, they have to put the /6, otherwise you won't accept for it. And go ahead.
What's the /6/6 region you're operating from?
Yes, traditionally, going back in history,
And that changed.
yeah, going back in history, you could not operate permanently on another zone. You had to change your call. If I moved from here to Texas, I would have to get a 5 call. Many years ago, when you were traveling and you want to operate from Texas, I would say KL7HQR, portable 5 or /5. Okay, and that was the way to indicate, yes, this is my call, but this is where I am. And it was mandatory to do that. And no longer. Okay, KP4ND is a call from Puerto Rico. She could not have that. I could not have KO7 operating in California under the old rules. Not permanently. You could operate temporarily with a /. And there is another variation that I see. When you go to another country, is the country code first, then / your call, right?
That varies by country, what their requirements are.
You understand?
Yeah, like Jan was just in Japan, had to have a local call.
Yeah, Jan had to get her own call there.
And she's another example of a K1. KI1.
She's KI1.
Yeah,
so.
so she's.
Yeah. You're familiar. I don't know how you follow. You're familiar with Jan, and she loves cats. So her call is Kilo India 1 Tango Yankee, and Kitty. Okay. So she couldn't have that in California. But that was a good question.
So Carol, when you were in Puerto Rico, did you have a / after your call, or it was just your normal call, and then you give a / when you were here?
Well, when I first moved to Puerto Rico, I had a WB2 call because I started out with a call from New York. And when I operated there, I had to always sign WB2 as the /KP4, which is super, super long.
Yeah.
And that got really old. So after a few months, I just sent in to the FCC and said, please change my call sign. So I got the KP4 call. And after they changed the rule that you did not have to have a prefix that coincides with where you live, I was able to keep that. And I moved a few times, and that's why I have it. I don't get much problem on VHF, but I do have the same problem on HF. Sometimes they hear my call sign and they get all excited. It's another DX entity. Puerto Rico counts as a separate country from the United
So
States.
does Alaska.
I apologize for that, but if I wanted to, I could sign KP4B/6. But it just makes it so long.
In the contest, sometimes you have to do.
Yeah.
Either you do that, you say California, in California, so they know, and they may not want to answer you either. Okay. By the way, if there are questions from things that we already covered, let us know. Okay, we're just chatting. Okay. Bands used and when you should use each band. Okay, I put a credit here for this slide. I saw this slide in a movie, in a video on YouTube, and I liked it. So basically, and again, I don't want to insult your intelligence. I'm quite sure some of you know a lot more about this than I do. But what we have, the way HF propagation works, basically you can contact another station by two methods. One is the ground wave. The ground wave, look, it's normally closed, and that distance will vary from band to band. It's a closed location that the signal goes, it slightly bends over the curvature of the earth, and you still make a contact. Or you can go with the refracted signal, refracted signal from the electrified part of the layers of the ionosphere. The signal goes up, and as you can see, if you consider that those layers of the ionosphere as a variable intensity mirror, okay, that it will reflect more at certain times, will reflect less. Then that's what the sun ionization, the sun activity, will cause that mirror to be more or less effective. It will vary with the time of the year. It will vary with long-term cycles. We'll talk about that in a minute. But it also varies from day to night. As the sun sets, the ionization level change, and that then changes the reflectivity. Okay. And certain bands are more appropriate for certain times. Okay. There is such things. There are many things many tools available to find out which frequency you should use. Carol had a very nice presentation on the WCAP.
Yes.
That was impressive details. I didn't know about that. I was really impressed with that. That talks about that. Was that presented to this group?
Yes, the last time.
Yeah, and there are other things like critical frequency. Critical frequency is the frequency which it's being reflected. It gets to the point that it's the first frequency that goes away, does not reflect. And then you have maximum usable frequency, which is how high can you go. Those are very, there's no tools that you can use. They're really, I'll show you a much better method in just a minute, okay? They work, but my method, I think, is a little bit better. I chose that segment because of the young man. I was watching the clips yesterday on YouTube, and was watching this particular channel on this. I saw this segment, and I'll let you tell him about how we know that.
Oh, yeah, Dr. Nathaniel Frizzell. He is actually the director and the founder of the Ham Site Project, which is amateur ham radio science citizens investigation. And they actually were the ones that planned the solar eclipse QSL party. They got so many amateur radio operators involved getting on the air during the eclipse in order to collect this information and send it in for analysis. The whole point of this is to get a better understanding of how the ionosphere works, the effect of the sun on the ionosphere, the effect of the shadow moving of the ionosphere, in order to hopefully improve the prediction tools that we have right now for figuring how the ionosphere works ahead of time. So we're trying to improve our models, and that's what it's all about, and that's what we're looking for. There's always more to learn about amateur radio and the physics of amateur radio.
So,
Yes, we met him.
Yeah,
Yes.
we went to the KPH.
KPH.
Yeah.
Yes, that's over at Point Reyes. The Maritime Historical Radio Society operates the old historical Morse code station for the ships at sea over at Point Reyes, California. And we were invited out there to see the historical transmitters and the receiver sites. And Nathaniel Frizzell was there with a group of the other citizen scientists. He's a brilliant guy. He's got a doctor's degree. All of these people, they're at university level doing studies in radio science.
And he looks like he's about to get out of high school.
Yeah, he's a young looking, but he's extremely brilliant, and he's just got a lot of motivation, and he's got some brilliant ideas. We have some really smart people working in our community. If you even heard of Dr. Joe Taylor, who invented FT8, he invented the WSJTX programs, and he started as a ham radio operator in high school. He got a copy of the ARL radio handbook and built for a science project a radio telescope. And that led to him eventually going into that professionally and earning a Nobel Prize in astrophysics. So there.
So see what happens when you go into ACAM?
Yes.
So ham radio ain't dead.
You all have potential in
And in meetings like this, like we have on a monthly in our club, there's a lot of expertise in the room. Somebody in this corner, in this area, this person in the other area may not be book expertise, maybe experience in life. And I think these meetings can, if we really participate, be extremely helpful in individual growth. So that's why when we do presentations like this, I'm getting as much out of you guys in your questions as I can possibly offer. Okay. I'm quite sure everybody's seen this many times. This is the ARRL, United States Amateur Radio Frequency Band Assignment allocation, and it's like Phil said. A lot of these slides are high test, right? There is no way. But here, I assume you've seen them, and we will distribute. We will provide you with some copies. It goes from 160 meters all the way up to the UHF frequencies and higher. Okay. Basically, what you see in here, very quickly, the green would be the operation in voice or non-data. The red would be data, which includes Morse code, and the horizontal would be for the different types of license. The extras, they always have more of the band allocated. The advanced, the general, and we used to have novices and technicians. The reason I want to mention this is that if you look at the 10-meter band in here, okay, the novices and technicians, there is an area that you can actually use voice on the 10-meter band right now, and that's why our 10-meter net is on 28420, which is in that part of the band that everybody is welcome to participate. So you don't have to wait to become a general to start joining us. Okay. Many other details in here, but it's much better when you have the charts in your hand. Anything you would like to discuss the significance here, Carol?
No, I think that's very good. It's important that you stay within your band segment, or else you could get a nasty letter from the official observers that now they call the volunteer monitor program. And it's honestly just trying to keep you out of trouble. What they do, they give you a warning. We've such and such a time we may have heard you on a frequency you should not have been on. So we're just trying to be helpful to each other and keep everybody.
And after operating for all these years, I guarantee you, I probably made some mistakes and operated where I shouldn't, not on purpose that I know of, or that I am admitting. Anyway, go ahead.
So I've come across this question in my mind about how to stay within those limits. And one time I tried to program my HF radio so the memory channels would put me in the middle of my segment, or I had the endpoints for one channel and the other endpoint for another channel. That didn't work so good. It got to be kind of kludgy, but I was just thinking about ways to remember the limits. Is there like mnemonics or tricks, or you just practice?
I think it's just experience. If you work 40 meters and 20 meters and 50 meters all the time,
Yeah.
it gets to you. But
Right.
my 7300, you can't set band limits, and it just beeps as you reach that. Okay, I'm quite sure others have the same thing.
Ham Radio Deluxe does that too. If you're using that as a logger, it'll beep at you when you go out of range. You can set it. You can set it whatever you want. But so the 7300, my 705, which is how I know about this because I just learned that.
Cool.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I use a Ham Radio Deluxe, but I haven't. I don't use it as a read control. So I haven't seen it.
That's 710 so I think we can-
I'm sorry. Say again.
Thank you.
Oh.
This is from 2012. Have there been many changes since then? Or just minor?
I searched the internet, and that was
Yeah,
the
those are huge
latest.
changes.
Yeah, there's the new bands, which are the low frequency bands, 137 kilohertz and 472 kilohertz, that came out in a subsequent copy of that.
Oh, there is a new
Yeah,
version of
yeah,
this.
there is a new version.
Okay, and you have the new version?
Oh, yes.
Oh,
I still, when I Google it, I get like 3 or 4 different versions, and so I have to look at the date.
Go to the ARRL website.
Okay.
Yeah, yeah. You can download the PDFs.
Mhm.
I didn't. I actually scanned my copy to do this. I should have done that. And I tell you what, we're talking about violating band. It can be very tempting to do that because you are right at the edge of your allocated, and that one DX that you want is about 5 kilohertz below. Okay, so I have tried stay within the band, hoping that he kind of accidentally listened to me higher. Doesn't happen too often, but it can be very tempting. But it's not worthwhile. It's not worth doing it.
There are several questions on the general and extra exam about this issue, where they'll ask you where you can be. So to Wilson, your question, you just have to memorize it.
Okay.
You just have to know where you are. And always have the reference to look.
I have this under the plastic on my desktop.
Yeah.
Okay, it's very, very visible. But as I said, if you do work those bands, I normally work 10, 15, 20, and 40. That's it. I hardly work any other band. And after 50 years, you learn.
It should stick.
Yeah. And then they change. Okay. Very generic statements, okay? Normally the higher bands, 2017, etc., are more active during the daylight hours, sometimes in the morning, okay? They are the most active for DXing when the propagation is over, which is the case right now. We'll talk about that in a little bit. But as the day progresses, they tend to close, and normally they close in order. The higher frequencies, 10 meters will close first, and then 15 and 20. 40 and 80 tend to be, 40 normally during the day, but they go on into the evening, and 80 meters is in the evening. If you go back to that slide with the ionosphere reflecting, that's exactly what happened. The sun is set, so the frequencies that are being reflected or being allowed to go through are different. And as soon as they are allowed to go through, well, they're dead bands because you're not going to hear any long distance. Okay. I think this is basically one of the reasons that we're doing this experiment yesterday, because the sun didn't set, but it was covered. So what was the effect in the ionization of the ionosphere? Okay, but a similar situation. Is it similar or not? That's what they're trying to find out. And again, I wanted to reference the vocab. Anything you want to add about that presentation of the vocab?
No, I think
Speaks for
it's
itself.
It's very clear. It
Yes,
speaks
it
for
is.
itself. Sure.
Okay. The shaft communications propagations are affected by 11-year sun cycle. I think everybody heard that. We're presently getting close to the center of the cycle number 25. Okay. The last that I found, that will change, but you're expecting a peak between November 2024 and March 2026. So it's an excellent time for you to come down and join us at HF. Most of the transceivers for HF have 100 watts maximum. You can control from 0 to 100, but maximum is 100. The maximum allowed is 1500 watts. But the condition that you have right now, you can talk long distance very easily with much less than 50 watts. I have made contacts to Australia with 5-6 watts. Okay, not all the time. Okay, and let's face it, I have a directional antenna, so that helps a little bit. But even with a smaller antenna, I think you'll find that it will be very worthwhile this time and enjoy it, because that 11-year cycle, that peak goes away very quickly.
Neil, can I ask a question?
Please.
On digital modes, when you talked about the bands fading, is there a difference in the digital modes with voice? Is the same effect?
No, there's no difference. They're affected equally. What happens is that some modes require more power in order to be heard. Okay, so when you can no longer talk in voice in single sideband, normally you can still make contact with CW. Okay, and when CW starts fading away, that's the advantage of FT8. It's a mode that it's very slow. Okay, you can send very little intelligence, 15 seconds and 15 seconds just to send a few letters, but you can do it in conditions much worse. So in general, they're all affected, but not to the same rate. Anybody can clarify any more on that?
It's yeah, the CW and FT8 are super efficient. I mean, FT8 is really efficient. So
It's basically it, they're all affected.
when you look at if you're transmitting with 24 kilohertz, what would you call that?
Bandwidth?
Yeah, bandwidth, right? Whereas in CW, you're at
You can go down to
300.
Yeah, it's very
You're
little.
going smaller, and then FT8, you're
Super.
5 or something. I forget what it is.
I don't.
5.
I haven't done much.
But you're
FT8.
slicing through. It's easier to move a lighter object.
Yeah, you can make FT8 contacts when the signal is minus what? 20 dB, something like that.
Yeah, some of the contacts that made it doesn't matter what time of the day, night.
Right.
It always seems to be.
One of the things that happens though is that it may close towards Europe. And it's kind of interesting. If you listen to it has been normally in 10 meters. In the morning, you're getting Europe very well. And then gradually it kind of shifts. And then it becomes a little some of Asia. And then it goes around. Of course, in California, you can't get rid of Japan. They're there all the time, whether you like it or not. And then it goes down to Australia. So you can see that when the reflection or refraction in one direction disappears, it may be opening in another direction. So there's always signal.
Follows the sun, basically. Europe to Australia.
Yeah. That's what the gray line, right? You have the gray line effect, which is NASA calls the terminator, is the division between day and light, and the signals along those lines. In some conditions, they seem to have better effectiveness.
Neil,
Yes, sir.
where does 6 meters fall into this?
6 meters, 50 megahertz. I consider. Is it HF still?
No, anything above 30 megahertz is
30,
VHF. But sometimes you'll get the maximum usable frequency go up that high, and you can get F-flares go.
Like they used to
I
say,
just
skip
wondered
is
as far as
in.
propagation was concerned, daytime, nighttime, where does 6 meters fall?
Well, it will not be as good as 10 because it's way up there. But like Carol says, there are certain circumstances where the muff goes up and you can make long distance contact, but not too often.
No, not too often, not F-flare. Yeah, there's one kind of skill called sporadic E, which is more common on 6 meters. And you'll see that sometimes around June a lot. and also in December. And I don't know if we really understand very much about sporadic heat. That's one of the propagation.
The name
modes.
sporadic, right?
Yeah, it's almost impossible to predict when it's going to happen. They think it may have something to do with wind shear up in the ionosphere. It's still not completely understood.
I remember there was one question that was about the solstice, those are the solstice periods.
It could be because of this. Again, the sun location, right?
Well, and how far it is above the horizon, and so on. Because we also have to deal with that as far as how it's affecting where we are.
Mm-hmm.
And that, so when it's more southerly, as it is in December for us,
Yeah.
then it's going to affect our propagation differently than it would in midsummer.
There's another factor also. The northern hemisphere has most of the land. The southern hemisphere has most of the ocean.
Oh,
And
yeah,
that
I
creates
hadn't
a
thought much
difference
about that,
as well.
so it gives the amplifier effect to Australia when we're trying to get them.
Yeah, only when you want. When you want, you can't hear them. But when they come in okay. Any other questions on this before we change to another subject, another section?
You're talking about, you mentioned, you showed a slide that showed the skip zone. And I wonder if you could explain if you've ever had a case where you plan to call CQ, you look for a clear frequency, you ask, is this frequency in use? You don't hear anything, then you start calling CQ, and then all of a sudden, you hear another conversation on there that you didn't hear before.
Very much so. 10 meters, very common to that happen. You know, it used to be right in the beginning of the cycle. It
Yes.
happened all the time, and still does, because when you catch guests. And there are times that you're looking at the waterfall, there's nothing, and all of a sudden there's a little, or all of a sudden it starts filling up, and in about 10-15 minutes it's gone again.
And sometimes there could be actually somebody using the frequency you can't hear because you're in their skip zone.
Yeah. The other thing that he's always mentioned is that if you hear nobody in the band, call, because probably there may be 100 people just listening. Nobody's talking, and they think the band is going. It happened. It happened.
Band's not dead.
That brings up a question that I've had. So when you're calling CQ and you don't get a response, how long do you wait before going somewhere else on the dial?
Well, it's a question of your patience level. Okay, I normally call about 5-6 times, and then I'll move up a little bit. On the old radios that you didn't have the waterfall, it was a little bit different, because then you move up a little bit and you scan the freak. Nowadays with a waterfall, you just, oh, there's a signal here, let me go see what that is. So it helps, but normally my patients allow me to try about 5-6 times, and then I'll move on. I'm quite sure there are other people who are less or more patient than I am. Okay.
Do you use a voice cue?
What?
A voice cue, which is it's a recorded CQ call that people use.
No, my radio has that capability for all modes, but I never used it.
Yeah.
You hear that a lot in contests, that the voice calling CQ for
Yeah.
the contest, and then when you answer, it's a different voice that comes in.
Yeah, because I've heard that on listening.
Yeah, it's perfectly legal to
Yeah.
to do that, and I can understand why. I just personally never used it.
Yeah.
Okay, I told you I had a real good way to a much more effective way. This is how I do my band selection, okay? You turn it to a band, and you find that, try calling CQ. If not heard, go for another band. And if that doesn't work, you keep on doing that all day. Eventually you find some contacts. Don't need any maximum usable frequency or anything. This is a lot more effective.
Yeah. If it works, use it.
No, but in reality, that's basically what you do. You know when generally when the bands are open, and you're going to use that information. You're going to go to those bands, but always reach a point. Oh, I have half an hour. What do I do? Let's go see if we can make some contacts. Okay. Yes.
Neil, I've experimented on my HF rigs using the scan function, where you can scan between 2 endpoints in the band. It's just kind of interesting to let the radio scan a couple hundred kilohertz some radios will stop when it hears traffic. And have you done that before?
No, I haven't. I don't even know if my radio can do that.
Which one do you have?
I have the
I'm
7300.
pretty sure it's scanned.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It'll be interesting, but it will stop. It's just like scanning on a broadcast band, right?
It depends on the radio and how it's set up. I think you can set it to stop, and sometimes it will just keep going, and when it hits the end point, it'll just start all over again.
Yeah, it'll be kind of interesting to see if it works. Although scanning the band is part of the fun.
Yeah.
It's part of the fun.
This doing this.
Are we looping?
Go the other way.
I appreciate the questions and the additions, because the things that I never thought about. Okay, you're going to hear a lot about DX clusters, okay? And we don't have much more to go, so it's been over a little bit, an hour now, so I know everybody wants a little bit of a break. DX clusters, they are just sites that it's easy to tell you what they are by saying how they work. Okay, a person is find a DX. It's a site that you go download the software, or you go online and you're looking. They have a list. You hear a DX, you go in there and you enter I am so and so. I'm a DL station in Germany. I am now listening to a PY2 in Brazil on this frequency, in this mode, at this time. And they enter, and that immediately is broadcast on the list. It goes on the list of DX. So everybody else that's using that can then go and see what are the DX that are coming in. Okay, it's free to use. There are many of them available. Some of them are more favored than others, but there are many of them. And since it is free and it is an immediate, real time, you're seeing exactly what. Now, a couple of things is that if you see, so this German station is hearing PY in Brazil, okay, and you see another entry that a Spanish station is hearing, and an Italian station can hear the same voice. It may or may not be significant to you because you're in the United States. They may be hearing it in Europe. It may not affect to you. But so that's why you have the information of who entered, so that you can put filters. You can filter the list that you see by band, by mode, and many other factors. Okay, but that's basically what DX clusters are, and they are usually can be accessed by some of the logging software like Ham Radio Deluxe and several others. Okay, this is basically it's not expected for you to read. It's just some samples that I went on the internet and I found some. They have different designs, different presentations. This one here is a little bit more legible, and what we have in here is we have the DE from, this is the station that entered, okay, LZ station, and I don't have my reading glasses here, so I cannot help much. K1 station. This is the DX, this is the station that they are in, okay, that's the frequency, any observations, and the time. And the time always in UTC. That's basically, it's a very good tool that is perfectly legal to use to go try to get new DX. It's recommended not to be used during contests. As a matter of fact, there are some contests that have rules against it, against use artificial aids, okay, on how to do the contest. There are some contests that is still allowed. I think ARRL does not allow the use of it. If they do, yeah, you can use, but the number of points you're going to get is going to be 0 or something. But anyway, they're very useful and very good to know. DXpeditions. As due to remoteness, due to economic conditions, political conditions, whatever, there are many parts of the world that are very, very few amateur radio operators, and some places 0. So what the expeditions are, they are groups and organizations that decide, let's go and legally get a license and go to this island or this place and put it on the air for so long. And these things take a lot of effort and a lot of money, usually depending on where you're going. It takes a lot of money to run the expeditions, and so they go there and they announce that we're going to be there on that date, on these dates, and we're going to operate on these bands with these modes and etc. As you can imagine, they are an avalanche of people trying to contact them, right? And they normally don't go with a single operator. They have several operators, and they have different several stations with the antennas, because their intent is to kind of really put that on the air as effective and as efficiently as they can for as long as they can. And there are places, for instance, like in North Korea, you know, amateur radio is basically illegal. So if anybody can do a DXpedition to it there, I want to get the QSL card before they get arrested. But,
It's a one-way trip.
and to contact them, listen to what Bob is going to talk to you about the contest, because the skills that you require to use, they are really, really difficult to obtain. But when you do, that's the space station moments too. Okay. These are some of the recent ones that took place. Okay, St. Vincent and Grenadines down on the left. I'll leave this one for last. Cameroon on the west coast of Africa. Sable Island, which is just a strip of land, many hundreds and hundreds of miles east of the coast of Nova Scotia in Canada. And but that's basically the type of place they go. You know, just there's nothing there. They have to bring everything. So now, Bouvet Island. I would strongly suggest that you do a search on Google for the expedition for Bouvet Island. It was incredibly difficult. It's an island near on the southern part of the Atlantic, very close towards Antarctica, with Antarctica weather. Okay, desolated. They tried to go, if I remember correctly, Carol, maybe Rob, they tried to go to the island several times, could not land.
Because of the weather.
The
yes.
weather. And I don't think anybody got hurt or died in there, but
Almost.
Yeah, it was incredible. You know, so do your a Google for Bouvet Island. It's really good. I see. This is not my QSL card. I did not talk to them. I got this from the internet. Okay. Did you contact them, Bob?
No. No, they had probably eight or 10 radios that they brought with them, and they were only able to use maybe one or two. They had to put on life suits and float in. The generators didn't get there. They only had one or two antennas and worked very few stations, and had to go because their life was in great peril.
That was incredible cold and snow and ice.
Sounds like an Ernest Shackleton story on
Yes. As a matter of fact, when we did the cruise to Antarctica, we followed Shackleton's route exactly. It was interesting. Okay, now, what can you get out of the DXing? Awards, ARRL, all others, there's all kinds. Bob is going to cover this in more detail later. But basically, the two that are mostly well-known and most gone after are the DXCC, the DX Century Club, which is awarded to when you provide evidence of contacting, having two-way communication with more than 100 countries. And the WAS is working all states, so the same thing for all 50 states. That can be done in a mixed mode, some contacts in Morse code and some contacts in voice, etc., etc. Or it can go by a specific mode or a specific band. And so there, you can have dozens of DXCCs on your wall. And I know a gentleman who was a member of this club, Jim, he has 6 Papa Kilo. He has over 240 countries, and you walk in his house and there are certificates all the way on the hallway on it.
Wallpaper.
Yeah, his single lives alone. By the way, he's one of the two gentlemen that we used to follow on the welfare nights doing COVID, and I lost track of him, and about 3-4 months ago I managed to contact him. He's in good shape. But there are many others, okay, out of the IARU and other organizations that, again, Bob's going to cover that a little bit more. That's some examples, and I'm quite sure that the visual changes, right, from another thing is, what are countries? We said, hey, you have to talk to over 100 countries. What are countries? Well, they should be called, and they are called entities, because as was mentioned before, Alaska, Hawaii, Puerto Rico are considered separate from the United States, and that occurs all over the world. There's a little island in the middle in there, it's considered separate. And so they're not really countries, but currently they have about 340 in the world. And many of them disappeared. Yugoslavia, Czechoslovakia, Canal Zone, Panama Canal Zone. That used to be. USSR was, yep. But if you got the X-Century Club based on those, it's still valid. And they still count towards your number of countries that you have. Okay? Very quickly about logs. Used to be the hard copies of logs was mandatory. Every log you had to do it. I'm going to show you some of mine here. Look at that. And I had my first contact, 1971, that log, and not only tracking the place, but numbering them. Some years ago, logs, because of the many different modes and different circumstances and the internet, the logs were not made, no longer required. And but now they're primarily electronic. Okay. The electronics, there are many flavors. We already mentioned some of that. Logbook of the World is handled by ARRL. You don't have to be a member of the ARRL to use it. It's free to use. There are fees if you go after certificates and a few other things. QRZ, another Q code. QRZ means who's calling me. You know, QRZ. Somebody called you, you didn't catch the This is so and so QRZ. But they have a site, very, very interesting site online, which they have a tremendous amount of services. They have a place for you to put your bio. They have, and if you enter a call, it's free to use. You enter a call, you'll come up with a location with the direction of the antenna, and even a map. And so it's really a site that I think you should visit and take a look at it. And when you use Ham Radio Deluxe or a few other automatic loggings, and you enter the call, they automatically go to QRZ and bring up that information. So you enter the call, and you all of a sudden you have the name and address and everything of the person. Okay. Okay. Just to finishing out QSL cards. These are some that I recently got. All of those are very easy. The one on the top right is the hardest one to get. Okay. But they used to be hard copies, and now they're primarily electronics as well. Call sign assignments. Last few slides here. About to come in for a landing. The ITU, the International Telecommunication Union, is in charge of allocating blocks of letters to the different countries. This is alphabetical. I just took the first few. In North America, U.S. has Alpha, Kilo, November, and Whiskey primarily for ham radio. Canada, VEVA, VOVY, Mexico, XE, and XF. Those are the normal ones. They have special ones that they authorize for special event stations. Okay? They don't apply only to ham radio. Okay, they apply to broadcast stations, television stations. East of the Mississippi is all W, west of Mississippi, and they all start with K. They also apply to the registration of aircraft. All aircraft in the United States are registered with N, identification N on the tail. Commercial, private, so it applies to all activities. How is the world divided? In regions by the IARU, the 3 regions. We are region 2. This is the most important one, the world zones for the International Telecommunication Union. There are 90 of them. We are here in California on Zone 6. And normally the QSL card will have that information. And last but not least, we have the Maidenhead grid system. This is a system that was started in 1980 in the city of Maidenhead, where in England. And you see there, it is divided in grids of 1 degree latitude by 2 degrees of longitude, about 70 by 100 miles in the U.S. Because as you know, latitude is all the same, but as you go towards the pole, the longitude decreases. So in the U.S. is roughly that size. And each grid is also subdivided into 100 groups. Sacramento area is on Charlie Mike 98, and where I am in Antelope, Charlie Mike 98 HR has a subgroup there. Okay. Any questions on that? I have a reference in how you can get some information on this. And I told you there's a good reason to learn geography. This is a picture of my pin map. Okay? And when you get a new DX, I am fanatic about what I find. It's not up to date, but find out and put it in there. And so you probably cannot read, but this map is so old that this is called Soviet Union. And, yeah, it's still the old map. This has contacts that I made when in Houston, and since I came to California. And a summary. This is what we cover. What's DX, DXing, operating choices and modes, equipment, the operating differences, bands, allocation, DX clusters, logs, QSLs, etc. Okay? And we did that in infinite detail. If you take in consideration the cruising sampling modes. Remember I told you in the beginning it's going to be a cruising adventure, right? So now it's up to you to decide which ports of those you want to go back and get more information. It was just a sample. There's a tremendous amount of much more there. And here is a list of reference. Carol will have this, a copy of this. And this is a list of roughly of the reference material that I used, so that you can go and spend some time on the internet. Okay. One more time, any questions? Sorry for being so long-winded, but we learned it. Okay, if no questions.
Nice job, Neil, thank you.